Hello and welcome to the Ratnest podcast, episode number 31 with Ryan Berk.
Hey!
Hey.
How's it going, man?
What's up, man?
Doing?
We haven't had someone in the studio to do that in a minute. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, we could all see eye to eye.
yeah.
It was strange. That was weird.
It felt good. It felt good.
Cool.
Good.
As long as you're happy with it, we're
I'm
good.
happy with it.
Season 2 is the
Yeah.
season of hay.
Yeah.
So Ryan, tell us, I guess, first off, let's do a little introduction.
Sure.
Owner operator of Parliament Chocolate here in Redlands, California.
Yeah. Co-owner. I mean, me and my wife. Yeah. We own Parliament Chocolate. We own a little ice cream shop called All a Minute. Little background. I'm a chef. So got my start here in Redlands and love food. Yeah.
So jumping back to All of Minute, because that was kind of the first endeavor, right?
Yeah. So that was my baby. That's what got me back home. I actually started working at a little Thai restaurant here in town when I was 13 or 14. I had to do an internship through our school, and I ended up working for my friend's family at, I don't know if you guys grew up in Redlands, but Rama Garden.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, way back in the day, became a dishwasher there and worked off all my hours, and they decided to keep me on and became a line cook at 15. Fell in love with food. Got to travel to Thailand with them when I was 15 for a couple months. Culture is like, I mean, it blew my mind. I didn't really know much outside of this town. So, I mean, cuisine, culture, and that sort of what plowed me into understanding and wanting to understand more about culture and food. And so, worked for the family for 10 years, moved and jumped ships when they moved over to Benjerong.
Okay.
So, and then stayed with the family for about 10 years, knew nothing about European cuisine, decided to go to culinary school. So I went out to Le Cordon Bleu out in Hollywood. So would commute back and forth while still working at the restaurant. And after that, I got a low-end cook job at Casino Morongo.
Nice.
That was fun. That was interesting. Worked there for about 4 years. Made my way up the ranks and became one of the executive chefs. So
Okay.
had about 4 different restaurants that I had to oversee. About 40 to 50 cooks worked under me at the time, and really learned about like the corporate system. I hated it. It was extremely soul draining. It was pretty much based around bottom line, not about the ethics of the ingredients or products.
Right.
And then coming from Redlands, I mean, orange groves everywhere, knowing your farmers. I went to Grove High School, if you've heard of that place. And I mean, we had a farm. And so, I mean, I was really connected to cuisine, and obviously working at the Thai restaurant, connected to the culture aspect of things. I wanted to get out of there and get back to Redlands and do some concepts. And so, we ended up getting a big shipment of frozen fish in with dry ice packets, and I've always been mesmerized by molecular gastronomy, which is the science of food. And I got a dry ice packet out, and they were in little baggies. They weren't directly touching the fish or anything. So, so I pulled out this dry ice packet, smashed it up, made it into a powder, and made some ice cream base. Took it to our bakery and I froze it, and I took a bite of it and was blown away. I mean, it was just like the creaminess, the structure. That's when fireworks started going off in my brain. I'm like, man, I can work with Larry Giseno. I mean, all these farmers locally, and start making some really awesome like ice cream. My wife was an accountant at the time here in town, and she's like the numbers whiz behind the whole company, which is really important.
So, yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, that's the stabilized like aspect. You need the creativity and the person that structures everything.
Yeah,
So
that's the difference between going out of business in 5 years or thriving in 5 years.
absolutely right. So, so she lets me be creative to a point where, I mean, obviously not all my ideas are put onto the board because some of them are pretty out there. So,
What kind of creativity goes into like that, like coming up with a flavor, or like what are you talking about?
Man.
What is the boundary she puts on you?
you know what? It's just it. Sometimes when it has to do with like money or just like the super high end products and stuff,
got
she's
you.
just like, all right, take it down a bit, because I mean we're gonna need this X amount of labor to produce something, a product, and then breaks it down. I'm like, okay, it sometimes makes sense, but
it always kind of makes sense, but it always is like hurts a little bit when you have to I don't know, take away from what your original idea was, especially when it comes to using the highest grade ingredients or hardest source ingredients. It's when an owner, in a kitchen is like, well, we really have to watch our bottom line. We're making pizzas here.
Yep.
It's
which I've been there. So, I mean,
for sure.
that was, it holds you down a lot. And, but I mean, it makes sense. It does make sense in the end. Sometimes. So, I mean, I look at myself as an artist. I mean, I don't paint, I don't draw, but I mean, I want my pieces to be shown to your palates. And so, absolutely. I mean, that's my dream, and that's my view of it. And so, I'm just having a good time with it. It's a lot of fun.
That was a big thing when we first met you. It was like, dude, got to have him on the podcast, because there is such a creative process and such an artistic talent that goes into creating like you've done. And to not just, I mean, create the businesses and the product that you're doing, but the allure that the businesses have around them. You know what I mean? Yeah. You guys have become Redlands staples, both Alamanu and Parliament. Anyone in Redlands knows those names, and that goes a long way in business too.
Oh, for sure.
I was gonna say, I know you put so much effort, and your whole life, like leading up to that point, was moving towards this direction to open Alamanu, whether you knew it or not, kind of thing. Like at that point, you were going to do it regardless. But I mean, the way it blew up, I don't want to say it was like an overnight success or anything like that, but immediately, like, word on the street is you have to go check out this space.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. What you guys do is completely different for the area. No one was, I mean, it's a very like LA, San Francisco type of business.
That's what we've been told.
And, now, 10 years later, how long has it been there? It's been
10 years up until, 10 years in May, 10 years in May.
There you go. You guys were on the forefront of it. You're starting to see a little bit more of that here in Redlands, but at the time it was completely mind blowing to a lot of people, which is awesome.
Yeah. I think we were the 10th in the world to do this as a shop, the first in Southern California.
Oh, really?
And then the second in California.
Sick.
Right. So I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I didn't even know there had been ice cream shops opened in this process. So, I mean, I'd seen it on like cooking shows, and I'd read about it and done research about it. But when I first got the idea and when I first tasted the product and made it for the first time, I'm like, man, this would be a really cool ice cream shop. I mean, with the concept, and I mean, obviously the visual aspect of it with liquid nitrogen and the steam billowing off and stuff looks really cool, but that's not like the reason we do it. So, I mean, that definitely is effective, but obviously the reason we do it is because it minimizes ice crystals. It makes it much, much creamier. The structure of it gives us so much more broad ability to create different types of flavors and different types of ice creams, whether it's like a sorbet or a granite, or, I mean, it's just like, there's so many different possibilities with liquid nitrogen. So
I've been in and you watch them make the ice cream. Can you walk us through, or walk anybody listening through, like, what is it from ingredients to end product? Like, how does that happen, and how does it work?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think what truly makes our product outstanding is the ingredients, first and foremost, always. I mean, it's just like, that's whether it's Alamanu or Parliament. I mean, it's just knowing where our product and our ingredients are coming from, and the people behind those products are ingredients are so important for us to dive in deep with and become friends with the people behind it. And I think it tells a story for sure. I mean, if those people that are farming those products respect the product and ingredients that they're producing, then coming out and in turn to the consumer, they're going to love it.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if we can sort of curate it and sort of nestle that product along and turn it into something great, we think it's going to be an outstanding product. So
you kind of find people that have the same mission statement as yourself.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, just respecting the whole entire sort of supply chain. I mean, it's just, we call it in the industry direct trade. So you have, we go direct to the producer, direct to the farmer, whether it's olive oil, whether it's strawberries, oranges, chocolate, cocoa beans. I mean, it's just like, and so, yeah, call it direct trade and try to cut out that middleman so that, I mean, it takes a lot more work, but it also gives us an ability to create more of a living wage for the farmers and the farm pickers. So, sure, yeah.
I was gonna say when it comes to sourcing the ingredients, and you're working, like you said, direct trade with these farmers. Mm-hmm. How does that start? Like, how does word on the street get to you that you should contact this specific farm or farmer, and where, like, how does that kind of relationship blossom? Do you go visit these places? I mean, you have farmers all around the world, right?
Yeah, yeah. I work with, I mean, thousands of cocoa farmers, and usually they're centralized co-ops or centralized farmers doing all the processing when it comes to the beans, the cocoa beans, that is. And then same thing with oranges or strawberries. I mean, the way it starts is, I guess that's a very, I'm a very out there person. I put myself out there, and if I see somebody that's passionate about something, I'm gonna interject and want to work with them and become part of whatever their process is. And so it's just over the years of just that drive of wanting to make something better and create something more amazing. It's just, I think that's just sort of floated in the boat with a bunch of other guys and that were just as passionate. And I think it's just, and we become friends. And so I think it's just over the years, it's just fluid. It's just natural. So I can't really think of an instance that it, I don't know, it's sort of just in a way complicating, but very natural in the same way of how we started working with all these different guys. So, yeah.
And then when you were at Le Cordon Bleu, do they have like focuses? Like, I know, a pastry European training is or like French training is kind of like the standard, right? It's like
for sure. It was
what they're built off
the
of.
Main focus.
But then do you also do pastry and dessert and stuff within that?
I mean, well, yeah. So we had a pastry class for one of our sessions, for one of our semesters.
But just a small focus on it.
Just a small, not even a focus in chocolate whatsoever.
Gotcha.
So chocolate, not ice cream. I mean, I've always been somebody I've always wanted to understand the core of things. I mean, up until last year, we had a property up in Yucaipa, an acre of land, and we had about 60 olive trees that we planted from seedlings, and we would produce our own olive oil. Wow. And so I wanted to understand about olive oil. And I mean, I want to understand the depths of why products taste so amazing, and those core ingredients, why they can be brought together and create an amazing dish. And so whether that's olive oil, whether that's sea salt, whether that's vinegars, alcohol, I mean, it's just like all of these things are just so crucial to sort of understand the depth base of it before you can actually create an amazing final product.
Right. Those are the base levels to dishes. The olive oil plays such an important role in everything it's in. Hold on. How long did you have this property for, and how long does it take a tree to get to maturity to produce like that?
So we had the property, I think, for 12 years. Yeah. And we planted our first year. Full maturity is about 7-8 years. Okay. So within our first 4 to 5 years, they just start producing. And we were able to start picking and processing then. And then at full maturity, they were just like blowing up. So we were getting a couple gallons by the end when we ended up selling. So, but I miss it. I mean, I miss the trees, not the town. So.
Gotcha. It does have like so much untouched beauty in that area.
Oh,
and
for
it's
sure.
Like, I can't do it.
Nope.
No, I'm not shitting on anyone, to each their own and whatever, but it's pretty rough.
It's
in a weird way. Locals know what we're talking about. This won't make sense to anybody else.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. You guys can come out here and check it out if you want.
We'll give you a tour. So do you live in Redlands now?
I do. I live up sort of by the what's it called? The cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Redlands Cemetery. Yeah. So I live up there. I mean, I've been wanting to move to Redlands forever. My wife and I mean, Cassie grew up on 4th Street on the street that you guys live on here. So, yeah, she grew up there, and I mean, she's, and I grew up in Loma Linda. Then we moved here right after we got married, and, just stayed. I mean, we were planning on leaving. We were looking at places in Portland and Washington and LA, and then we just got sucked right back in. So.
Redlands has a tendency to do that, man.
I was just like so wanting to get out of here too.
Yeah.
It's funny. So. Yeah. When you grow up in a place, I feel like that instinctually you just want to leave. Like once you're 18, you're like, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yep.
And then strangely enough, a lot of people, maybe it's like an Inland Empire thing, but a lot of people like tend to like come back to where they grew up.
For sure.
Whether it's they have a family, they can afford a house, whatever it is. It's like, I want a piece of what I had for like my kids or my family or whatever, you know?
Yep. I mean, that's exactly how this town, I mean, Cass and I, we lived in England for a year, but it just got way too expensive, and we're just like, we had to move back. So,
that's awesome. I mean, a lot of people don't take that opportunity to do something like that, even if it is just like a year, whatever. It's like completely just a world of difference from Southern California.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I definitely recommend it. Travel abroad. I mean, move away. Traveling. I love traveling. So, I mean, it's just, especially for work. I mean, just meeting new people, new farmers. I mean, new foods. I mean, especially new foods. So, I mean, eating.
Do you travel for like, I saw on your website that you like take pride in the fact that you hand sort the beans and like hand pick them. Do you travel down to like bean farms often and like actually sit and specifically choose your beans and stuff?
I do. Awesome. Yeah. I actually opened up a company in Thailand. What was it? 5 years ago. So I've got a couple buddies out there, and I always wanted to work with farmers in Thailand. They planted quite a bit of cacao in the country because cocoa grows in tropical environments. Right. So most of the cocoa or chocolate bars that you consume, or most of the United States consumes, most of that cocoa that comes for that chocolate comes from West Africa. So like Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire. So those places right on the peninsula.
Right.
But obviously Thailand, from working in a Thai restaurant, it's always been such a close part of me. And so I wanted to do something in Thailand, and the government gave tons of seedlings, small trees, seedlings to a bunch of farmers about 15 years ago, in hopes that there would be a market for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the market never boomed. I mean, it's pretty much, cocoa is a pretty much an under carry tree or underbrush tree, and it grows way under like durian, jackfruit. What else? I mean, coconut. And so it works as an undercrop tree. I'm sorry, that's the word I was looking for. Undercrop tree, perfectly well in a what's called an agroforestry type of environment.
Okay.
An agroforestry environment is pretty much a consumable rainforest that you own. So like growing multiple different types of trees that you can profit off of. And so that's what we push for, like super hard. So, I mean, you've got, the natural terrain, plant life growing around it. It's all organic. And so we've been working with these farmers now for 5 years, opened up the company 4 years ago. And now we're distributing Thai cocoa beans all over the world.
Awesome.
So yeah, we're the first importers ever of Thai cocoa beans. And the reason it's so important in understanding and going to the farms for cocoa is the most in-depth part. So if you've ever had like third wave coffee, where like you have different origins, all those different cups of coffee taste completely different and amazing. So we're doing that with chocolate. We're pretty much like third wave coffee with chocolate. So we identify each origin, the depth of its fermentation, because cocoa beans go through this super in-depth fermentation process, where there's an ethanol stage where so each bean, there's about 50 to 60 beans in like a cocoa pod. And it's surrounded by this sweet pulp. It tastes like kiwi / melon in a way. Lots of water is still in it. So These 50 to 60 beans, all of these cocoa pods are harvested during the mature season. And then all of these beans are extracted from this pod and put into huge boxes. They usually weigh about a metric ton each, 700 kilos. And then they go through that rigorous fermentation process where all these wet, sweet beans sit in the boxes, and then yeast comes in and attacks all the sugar, just like yeast would for beer or wine.
Right.
And then all of that sugar and all of that liquid turns into ethanol alcohol at that stage.
Oh, okay.
And then after the ethanol stage, then acetobacters come in. So acetobacters are the bacteria that eats out the alcohol and starts to turn it to vinegar. So that's how vinegar is made.
Okay, okay.
So this takes about 7 to 8 days, depending on temperature and time. I mean, these environments are perfect for it. They're like petri dishes. So we monitor each process of the beans and make sure temperatures are rising correctly. They usually rise to about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, just because of, like, if you've ever seen a heap of hay sitting out in a field somewhere steaming. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like the same thing as acetobacter phase. So we're measuring the temperature, the time, making sure we're moving it, molds aren't growing on it. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we have to dry it really fast and properly, which can be very, very difficult in these wet, damp environments. So we have to do what's called raking and put them in huge drying tunnels. It's a complicating process. And so once we get the beans to a perfect stage, and we know they're going to be good, which what I just told you is what we do in our sort of what we call the bean to bar industry. Okay. The large corporate companies don't care about that process at all. I mean, they just don't give a shit. They
bottom line, right?
Oh, bottom line for sure. I mean, slave labor, child labor. Yeah. That's why it's one of the worst. I mean, it's a very difficult process because you can't mechanically harvest cocoa. So,
okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's why people have to go out there and pick the pods and break them open, and extract the pulp. And so why every Hershey bar that's a 70% Hershey bar tastes the same is because they'll take all these beans, they'll throw them in a roaster, and they don't care how it ferments. They'll throw them in a big heap in the middle of the forest. I mean, tons of rot grows on them. They're putrid. They're probably poisonous at that point. Then they're shipped out, and then they're roasted at the facility, and they're pretty much burnt. So it's like the same thing going back to third wave coffee. You have that low medium roast coffee bean. Right. Same thing with cacao. We very, very low roast our beans so that you can identify what those characteristics of the fermentation of the chocolate or the cocoa.
Interesting. I wouldn't have realized that would play such a huge role in it, but it makes perfect sense.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, for I think us and from my experience, I think it plays about a 70 to 80% of the flavor profile role in that chocolate
just bar. The roasting of the bean?
No, just the fermentation.
Or the fermentation.
Just the fermentation. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, like coffee, is the roasting process kind of similar to like a coffee bean?
So I do it delicately. So we actually do roast our beans in a convection oven. Okay. On sheet pans with perforated holes.
A little bit at a time.
Just a little bit at a time. And where coffee usually roast 400 degrees and above, cocoa you usually roast 200 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so it's a much slow process then.
Yeah. And a lot cooler because there's so much fat in a cocoa. It's made up of about 50% fat, 50 to 53% cocoa butter.
Interesting.
So that is super pliable to heat. And so that just like ignites all of the other organic properties around it and heats it up real quick. And so that's what gives it off. And so we delicately roast it just so that we don't break through and just burn off and burn all the carbon through all of those flavors of like the acidity and the fruity notes and whatever else flavor profiles that the beans have gone through.
Lose all the natural magic of them.
Absolutely right. Yep.
Dude, it's so interesting.
So
it's wild. And then, the fermentation process with cocoa bean, I had no idea. I assumed it was, like a coffee bean or.
So coffee usually goes through the lactic phase of fermentation or the aerobic phase or anaerobic phase, which is where the ethanol is produced. So coffee doesn't go through the same depth that cacao does.
Right, the several
on
stages.
the same spectrum.
Right.
Yeah, and there's definitely not the same amount of sugar in coffee at the fruit stage as there is as cacao.
Yeah.
So it's so much more pliable to different types of microbes than coffee. So,
Yeah, ready to eat those sugars.
Yeah,
makes
for
sense.
sure. So and so that's why I travel so often and so much to work with farmers and to see to understand their processing of fermentation mostly.
Yeah.
And obviously, I do some genetic understanding too when it comes to genetics of cocoa. We've worked with the USDA and bringing back samples because we've been in the depths of the jungle in Peru. And literally up the Amazon, I mean, taking boats, and we're looking for like wild genetics to bring back and sort of identify, because they can't find the specific strain and source of where cocoa came from. They knew it was from the Amazon, but they're trying to put all these links of wild cacao together to try to identify where cocoa's originated from.
Were the Mayans, like, it gets associated with like the Mayan
For sure,
and the
yeah.
Aztecs. Is that kind of like the belief still that those were the first cultures?
So
to
those are the first
incorporate
cultures
chocolate?
to utilize it. So there were some cultures in southern Peru or in northern Peru, I believe, in the San Martin Valley. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. I haven't San Martin Valley. And so cocoa was believed to have been brought up to Central America about 1,500 years ago. And then it was cultivated. And that today is what we see as what's called wild Mayan Criollo. And so that's a pure white bean. And that's what is thought to be the first cacao actually really utilized for consumption.
Like mass production, basically.
Yeah, exactly. They would use it for currency. So, it was actually used as money.
Yeah.
And so you would use that, back and forth. And then more than even South America, but they believe the origin of cocoa actually comes from the Amazon upper basin in South America.
Okay.
So believed. So, I mean, again, still a lot of research to be done.
But you're doing a lot of that research, it sounds like. Is it research that hasn't really been done in the past, or kind of uncovering?
It's just still sort of flipping over those rocks and trying to find out what is going on. So
in arguably one of the most dangerous places in the planet, like the rainforest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For
No,
sure.
seriously. Yeah. I mean, we've come across drug trade. I mean, mules, illegal gold mining, Chilean illegal gold mining. That was in Honduras.
What do you do when something like that happens? Like, what you come across something that you definitely shouldn't be around?
You just
like
keep
just
going.
give money, or like
I mean, we haven't gotten stopped yet, thank God.
No.
And we haven't, like, you just don't put yourself in the middle of anything.
Right.
I mean, you're there for your purpose. I mean, a lot of the farmers we work with in Peru, they grow coca.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's like their main staple. And it not only is it their staple to obviously send up to, I mean, so most of the coca that is grown is actually grown in Peru and not Colombia. It's just brought up to Colombia to be processed.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of the farmers that we work with are indigenous farmers, and coca is a part of their culture. And so, I mean, a lot of villages we've gone into, you bring dried coca leaves as sort of just a respect thing
offering,
to bring to the chief. And so, and then you chew the coca, and it sort of gives you like a little caffeine high, not like the real stuff, but so
what's the wildest story you've got or encounter you had being in one of these jungles in Thailand or Peru or Africa or wherever it's at? Like, what would be the moment that you were like, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
I would say Peru. We were going to a village that was growing supposedly some of these, or not growing, but there were some wild genetics in the forest, and the villagers were supposedly going to take us there. And so we were at this, so the Amazon breaks into two rivers in Peru, and I believe we were on the Urubamba, which goes up and drops in. So you have the Andes that drop down. And so we're going up the river, and we're at this main hub called Atalaya, which is a little town. And the only way to communicate with this village is is by radio. So they have a radio in town, and it's just blasting throughout the whole entire village. And so we were trying to let them know that we were coming. This is also a community that literally came out of the rainforest 20 years ago because they were forced out by logging.
Wow.
And so, so we actually had to work with a couple interpreters to go into this community. So they didn't speak Spanish. They spoke ancient or other dialects. And so we were trying to broadcast that we were going to come in and see what kind of genetics they were working with. And but their radios were down that day. And so and once you pull up from the riverbank to get into this little village, we start hiking through, and it's about a mile inland. Okay. So we're going through, and unfortunately they didn't have power that day, and so they didn't know we were coming. And so we were met with a bunch of bow and arrows.
Oh, no way. Yeah.
Wow. And like, it was a pretty gnarly experience. And they're just like yelling at us. And, then actually a documentary team came down with us and like captured the whole thing. So it was pretty interesting.
Wow.
And so they're yelling at us, and I'm pretty sure they were saying like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And they probably thought because in this area it was extremely dangerous. There was like genocide going on back in the, I believe, 90s or late 80s, and so they're just like really wary of outside contact with anybody. Sure. And so it's really important to show and give your presence and respect to these people. And so they didn't know who we were, but luckily we explained, and they didn't know if we were trying to come in and extract all their coca or whatever, or if we were DEA trying to come in, and because they're arrested all the time for growing. And so that's why cacao is an alternate crop that the USDA is trying to apply. Or USAID. But I mean, it's just, like I said, it's a part of their culture. So I would say that experience is probably one of the more intense.
When that goes down, what do you do? I mean, are you bow, put your hands up, just try to be as small as possible and let the interpreters kind of do what they can do? Because I mean,
there's nothing what can you do? You know what I mean? Just sort of stand back and you just like,
that's gotta be so crazy, nerve wracking.
Yeah. It was pretty insane. It was, you just sort of stand. I mean, this is an everyday part of their lives. I mean, this is what they have to deal with all the time.
Right. Sure.
So, for them to be wary, you show respect and you show kindness. I think it gets relayed in you, relayed to you back. And so I think that's what sort of came out and rolled out. And then obviously I'm here. So,
yeah.
But I mean, it's just like, one of the biggest, like, another big area is in Honduras. We work in a region called Wampu Serpi, which is on the southern part of Honduras. And it's the easiest point for small prop planes to fly from Colombia to this river that goes up from the Wampu Serpi. And so it's one of the biggest drug routes in the world for moving cocaine over. And there also, this river is really, really known for illegal gold mining. And so the only way to get these cocoa beans from this little village, because there's no roads into this village at all, there's airplanes, but that's way too expensive to move all these beans, because it's the weight of cars that need to move out of here. And so we have to take the beans up the river. And I had an opportunity to jump on one of those boats, and it takes 3 or 4 days to get up this river to where a truck can come down and pick them up and then take them and then go to the distribution area. And so I got the chance to jump on one of these little boats that go up these, I mean, they're gnarly rapids. I mean, it's but we had to stay at, like, there's brothels along where all the miners go, and those are the only places to stay at. And so, I mean, it's like, I think the World Series was going on at the time. So, I mean, it's just like this sort of raw environment. And everybody's into baseball down there. And so we were just like there was one little TV about this big with like about 40 people. And we were just like hanging out there at like 8 p.m. at night, just like watching this like little TV, and everybody's screaming and having a good time. And that's like, it's just such a I mean, different experience than what, but all with intention at the end goal, just trying to survive. So,
so insane. The fact that like, if you talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I have like a chocolate business. I have an ice cream shop. If you just done that, you're like, oh, okay. That seems pretty like simple, safe, small town, whatever. And then you start to dive into what you do and how you do it. And then it goes to, I was at a brothel watching the World Series on the Amazon River. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you have to be someone that's not just fearless, but has no reservations or like has no, I don't know. You just have to have the willingness to go along with the flow, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. And that definitely what it turns into all the time for me. I mean, I'm a pretty free spirited dude. It's just like, I like to just like let naturality and the environment sort of take me to where I'm going. And so I don't know. I don't really like to put the path in front of me. I like the path to sort of just go on it, like, and see what happens. Itself, yeah. So I think it's so much more fun. I don't know. It's just so much more enjoyable, and it's less anxiety in life. And it's just, if I die tomorrow, I die tomorrow, but I lived a great life.
That's right. Made the best of it.
For sure.
I got to say too, a lot of respect for taking the effort and the extra time, and I'm sure financial burden to care about the process all the way through, man. Like that is, it seems like it should be the way every business is run. Like when you just think about it, like, of course that's the way it has to go. But if you're, a lot of times I'll just source roasted beans because I want to start a company and it's cheaper that way. And the bottom line comes into play right at the beginning. For yourself and your wife, you actually cared enough to go through all the process. And I have a lot of respect for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Too many industries that are overrun with terrible practice.
Oh yeah.
Stuff that is completely covered to us here, first world problems basically, or for us. But like, for instance, the lithium and all the metals that go into our batteries and our phone, like that industry is disgustingly dirty. And if we ever knew about it, anybody that has a phone and says that they're pro human rights
we're all hypocrites. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, no matter what you do, whether it's the shirt off your back being made in Bangladesh, whether it's the phone in your pocket. I mean, whether it's the food that you eat, it's just, we're all hypocrites. It's trying to minimize. And
that's exactly right. That's where I have a lot of the respect, is because a lot of people would be like, well, I can't make a difference. I'm just one person or one company in this global economy. It doesn't matter if I do it or not. And you're like, no, it does matter.
It does.
And it shows in the product, in the end game too. And it's great, man. Yeah. It's great. I love seeing it. And the way you market everything too is perfect for Redlands.
Thank you. I mean, it's not just me. I mean, we work with incredible artists, and hat off to James McClung, if you guys know that name. He does incredible artwork, and and that surrounds it. I mean, our artists to the food, to the product and the ingredients. It's just a whole sort of lineage.
It's awesome.
Food can be a business and an art form, or it could be one or the other. But when the focus is kind of on the product, like you said, you don't consider yourself a painter, but the piece at the end is what you want to show off. Yeah. And that flavor profile is what you want to come through. And if any of it's mass produced, it takes away, it's like hotel art. It's not interesting to look at.
No, seriously. Yeah. I completely agree.
Dude, speaking of lithium though, I live out in the desert, and I just heard that the Salton Sea has like a lithium deposit we would be like 100 times the world's lithium provider if we mined it. And so they're trying to figure out how to sustainably mine it using the sulfur and the gas as energy from the Salton Sea, because it's such a wasteland. Like there's nothing they can do with that area. And they just figured out that there's lithium under there. So if they do mine it, it's this whole thing. It's going to obviously build the desert even bigger out there. But
it's a huge agriculture hub.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, it's like cell phones are already $2,000 or something. It's going to be like a $10,000 iPhone. But I mean, if you could mine that sustainably and using like the natural gases with a zero carbon footprint, it would be insane. Like it would be a worldwide game changer.
It sure would.
I mean, that would be
Right here in Southern
incredible.
California.
Yeah. I mean, we're already the 5th largest economy in the world. So, and that's just
California.
California.
Yeah, I was going to say
fifth
that's just
largest
California. I
economy
think.
out of all of the countries in the world.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm okay with breaking off and being our own country.
Dude,
So.
people talk a lot of crap about California, especially this last year. There's, mass exoduses from California to other states and stuff. It's like, I get it, but we also have like the opportunity here that a lot of states don't have.
Yeah, I completely. I mean, first of all, I think probably the most beautiful state in the country.
Yeah.
I love snowboarding. I love mountain biking, surfing.
I mean, I've been to pretty places all around the country. I haven't been to all 50 states. I've never been to Alaska. I'm sure it's just beautiful. You know what I mean? But for my money, like, I just rode my bicycle from Oregon to Oakland.
Oh, awesome.
And just through the redwoods.
Yeah.
And you just feel like this overwhelming sense of awe and like like anything's possible. And like you're a little kid again when you're surrounded by these giant trees that are the oldest on the planet. It's mind boggling.
Oh, I know.
So crazy.
Well, and that's why I think Redlands is even like a gem in its own, because you're an hour away from everywhere. I mean, the mountains, the desert, the ocean, chaparral environment, wineries in Temecula. I just like, you've got it all like in this little community. And
we take it for granted because we grew up here.
I know. And then you realize it. We're like, wow, this is actually pretty cool.
Maybe that's why some of us come back too. Yeah.
So yeah, the 120-degree weather in the middle of the summer isn't the greatest, but that's why you got to go travel.
Small price to
Surprise.
pay.
Yeah. Those are the months you get out of town and go check something out.
Yeah.
So we talked about Alamanu Parliament. When did this kind of endeavor start? Because how long have you guys been there now?
So Alamanu 2012, and then Parliament we opened a year later. In
just 1 year later.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that close together.
Yeah, it was really close. So
That had to be rough starting two businesses
were you just
at the same
going
time.
crazy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we ended up opening 4 Alamanuts total.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and then it wasn't like Redlands, so we brought it back, and then the pandemic hit, and it's just like home is where the heart is, and hopefully I do more projects. I'm also a partner at Arroy, too.
Right.
Okay.
So silent partner, but a partner.
Yeah, shout out Brian Bruce. We were talking about it when he was on here, and we kind of asked him the same question. We're like, dude, when you're in Thailand, did anything just shit hit the fan? Did anything go right? He's like, there was a pack of dogs in an alley. And then you're like, we came across, I was like, damn, vastly different stories here.
Yeah. So he's got to come down to South America with me.
Dude, it's mind boggling. I couldn't imagine that. It seems like everything I'd want to do, like my whole childhood, I was just like, I want to be Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I want to be on these adventures. I want to be in the jungle. I loved like the mystery, like the idea that there could be a dinosaur living in the Congo
For
still.
sure, yeah.
And now when I'm an adult, I'm like, that's scary. I don't want to do that. Like, it's so crazy.
No, yeah, it gets pretty scary from time to time, but it's just the adventure, man. I live for adventure. I live for that thrill.
Hell yeah.
I love when man, it's just the energy is there. So and just anything new, any new information, I just want to grab it and understand it.
Because of COVID, are you just strictly focusing on the businesses you have going now, or is there anything in the works that you've been
there's possibly
toying with, or?
something in the works.
Don't have to mention what it is.
I know I can't. Well, I can't anyway. I haven't signed a lease, and once I sign that lease, I'll be much more present about it. But there would be a big project coming into town if we move through with this. So.
Cool. Is something with the new development here in town with the railroad
not with
stuff?
one of Jack Dangerman's spots, but it's another big spot.
Cool.
Yeah, right downtown.
Very cool,
so,
man.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
and it's all food related.
Lovely.
So food, beer, alcohol, experimenting, breakfast. I mean, all kinds of different things. So.
I have to say, I love that Redlands is bringing in so much more like culinary. They've always kind of had, the little mom and pop shops that you can go eat at. Like it used to be State Street Deli, rest in peace, like great little sandwich shops like that.
Man.
But
Savarino's is great.
Savarino's is amazing now.
for sure.
If we had to give up one, I'm glad Savarino's exists.
I am too. Yes, I completely agree.
But there's so many more like restaurants coming in, like Aurora, like Olive and Citrus, like these new conceptual restaurants that are bringing kind of the beach cities inland
For sure.
and giving Redlands a whole new culture that never existed in the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Nowhere, it still really doesn't. You have to go to kind of Claremont or Montclair in order to get any of the same feel that we've got here.
No, I agree.
And it's really good with the railway coming in. Like,
I'm so stoked for that. A lot of people aren't happy with it, but I cannot wait.
I'm on the bandwagon, dude. I think it's great.
It would have been great during culinary school instead of having to drive into San Bernardino. So.
Southern California, I've always thought about that as like, for everything great that has going on, like even LA has like the worst train system, like the worst public transportation of anywhere. You know what I mean? It's like we're such a major player and we huge economy. Why wasn't this infrastructure put in place years ago?
Yeah, it's just so spread out. And I don't know.
I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure, it's like army bases and then the closure of army bases or whatever. It's like things lead to things in domino.
Yeah.
But it seems silly that we're in Southern California and there's no train to Vegas. There's no train to Northern California. There's no, it's.
I know. I mean, Elon Musk needs to put his tube in and
that's
perfect.
So
that's what we
tube
need.
It up, dude.
Yeah, seriously, it'd be so rad. I would be on that thing all the time.
Hell yeah,
yeah, dude.
Just
an
for
hour
fun.
to Vegas.
Just go have
An
dinner.
hour in Vegas, that would be dangerous.
Dude,
I would lose all my money real quick.
So when you're not at the shops and like overseeing stuff, you're traveling? Is everything you do focused around your work? Do you get to relax? Do you cook at home?
I do. I don't do a lot. I mean, I do cook at home occasionally, but it's just I'm cooking all day for work.
Yeah,
so
that seems.
I come
to be
home. I just want to decompress, and I really like going out to eat. I love being around people. I'm a huge extrovert, so and going around and hitting up the. I think we have great breweries in town. Escape, Ritual. I mean, hat off to them. They do incredible stuff. Escape's new spot is
so good,
awesome. It's amazing. So food's great, and so I try to go out. I mean, I get tired, and then I play tons of soccer. I play like 4 times a week, so I love playing soccer.
Yeah.
So and then adventuring through. My wife's all into backpacking, so I tag along with her on that. So she just did the John Muir Trail last year.
Sick.
Wow. Oh man,
that's
by
amazing.
Herself.
Wow.
I mean, it was insane.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah. So she's really into that, and so I jump on board when she wants to go backpacking and stuff, and mountain biking, all of it.
I don't know why I've been just like listening to NPR out in the desert and they have these little tidbits of information about it. But I heard that the view from like Idlewild up on the mountain, looking over like Hemet and the valleys and then Moreno Valley, San Bernardino Valley, John Muir was quoted as saying it was like one of the most pristine and untouched like landscapes he had ever seen. And like the beauty was like immense and was like, are we talking about San Bernardino Valley? Like the same place we grew up?
Seriously.
That's nuts. But you hear these things and you're like, damn, I am surrounded by cool stuff. You just forget about it.
I know. Right. You don't appreciate it until you're in the, I mean, my mother and father-in-law have a cabin up in Big Bear, and just that drive up to Big Bear is just, it's gorgeous.
And it's
like
decompressing, man.
Oh yeah.
By the time you're up in that air, you get out, you smell the trees, the air's
you're
crisp.
like, where am I?
Yeah, no more
in 40
smog.
minutes.
In 40 minutes, exactly.
And so it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so I do prefer Mammoth myself, but if I'm going to go snowboarding, I should say. So
I was just up in Tahoe and
nice.
So pretty. No, I can't anymore. I had a major surgery on my right ankle.
Oh no.
So it's just like pins and screws, and it doesn't like, it's my back foot and I just can't do it. I've tried. I'll get like 3 runs in and then I'm done.
Man, that sucks.
I did as a kid. Like I grew up skateboarding. That's how I injured myself.
Okay.
But after the surgery, I couldn't handle a whole day of it anymore.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. But I mean, just being in the snow and up there in the mountains, you're like, love this. It reminds me of being a little kid. And if you grow up in Texas or even like Chicago, you'll get snow in the cities and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as like mountain snow.
No.
Right.
Not at all. I mean, my mom grew up in Michigan, and then my dad grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And it's just flat, frozen land. It's just like, and that's probably why they both moved here.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying.
Yeah. My grandma's from Oklahoma. She's like, get the hell out of the Dust Bowl. And they moved west,
So and it's It's a great place to be. I love it.
Yeah, man.
For all your listeners, move here.
Shoot, man. This has been fun. We normally, we just talk to creatives and artists and makers of all different kinds. And you never know really where the conversation is going to go or what to do. You can see my notes for today.
They're perfect.
But dude, thank you so much for talking to us. And thank you for sharing your stories, and your passion comes through in everything you say.
Thank you guys.
And just want
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Everything you're doing.
Thank you guys.
Redlands needed it 10 years ago. We still need it.
Yeah, for sure. And go Rams.
Go Rams. Yeah. Okay. No, we'll put in the description where they could check out Parliament and Alma Minute and everything else that you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Man. It's
Cheers,
been
man.
great.
Thank you.
Anything you want to shout out before we get out of here?
No, eat good food.
There it is.
There it is.
This has been another episode of the Ratnest podcast. Catch us every week. Interviews on Fridays, YouTube for videos, and all major streaming platforms for the audio. Bye. Oh, that's Jim.
I'm Jim.
Bye everybody.
Hell yeah.
Cool.